Tyler, leading everyone.
So hi everybody, thank you so much for coming today.
Hi, Tyler.
I'm really excited to share with you guys all about my 3 months in Mexico and just about Live Different, the organization that we worked with down there, just kind of in general what they do. So before I talk to you about the 3 months, I just want to share with you guys a little bit about what they do. For those who don't know, it's called Live Different, and they are a Canadian nonprofit organization that does work internationally in Mexico, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Thailand mainly are the 4 countries they work in. So some of the programs that they have in place in those countries are their Builds projects, which are in Mexico and the Dominican Republic. And so volunteer groups raise money from Canada and they go down and build homes for families in these countries, which I know a lot of you have heard a lot about. We were just down there with people from our church group, and my family has been going for about 10 years now to do house builds in Mexico and the Dominican. Another program that they have is in Haiti. They have built a school that 400 children attend now, and these children are the first people in their family to ever attend school. So their parents have never attended, their grandparents have never attended because there never was a school. And so Live Different has gone in over the last kind of 5, 6, 7 years and has built a school that now has 400 children attending. And in Thailand, they work really closely with an orphanage there and working with the children there, and a little less frequently in Thailand, but groups still go every 1 or 2 years and they go and work with the children in the orphanage. Another thing that's really big in Live Different is the school presentations. So they send road teams across the country into junior high schools, middle schools, and high schools presenting about all sorts of different things. They present about their projects, about their builds, but that's a really small portion of what they're presenting about. They focus on self-worth and motivating the students, and they want to make sure that students know that they have value and that they have a purpose in life, and that no matter what, they can make a difference. So they go all across the country performing, and they bring a band, and it's a big production, and they have speakers and videos and interactions. Like, we've seen many of the performances, and they sometimes get the principals up on the stage doing different games and activities and really get the whole school involved in these presentations. They also have the Academy program, which is the 3-month program that I just was on this fall. So the program is geared towards youth ages 18 to 24, so postgraduate of high school, and it's sometimes called a gap year program because many students will attend this for the first semester and then they'll go off into school in January, or they'll wait the next year. And it's kind of like a really good program to help the students learn more about themselves. It's really good on a resume. It looks really cool. Like, getting to volunteer in a community and work off in a foreign country is really cool. And some people actually are going in to study those kinds of things. Like one of the guys that I worked with, Liam, he's actually going off to do international development in school. And so this was a really great starter to that and kind of a pre-course to what he was going to be taking in university. So this is the program that I just did. And so when I first got home, after spending 3 months living in Mexico, it was extremely overwhelming. It was an extremely difficult task to reflect on what I had just experienced over those 90 days. So the main focus of this program is people. The relationships, connections, and the interactions that we have with others in our life are so important. Each and every person that we cross paths with has been put on that specific path for a reason. They each have a purpose, and our job is to discover what that purpose is. The people that I met during my time in Mexico were there for a reason, and it was a time of discovery for myself, learning from others and from them, and growing as an individual thanks to their guidance, their encouragement, their support, and their kindness. I worked really hard to develop relationships with everyone that I met during the experience, and I ended up with lifelong friendships in the process. I was given the chance to work really closely with many organizations and local programs in Mexico, and during those times I was able to form really close friendships and relationships with all the kids and with the students that I worked with and met, and I got to meet some of the most beautiful, kind-hearted children ever. They were so welcoming, patient with me as I learned their new language, and very loving. Their smiles each day really helped me to remember why I was doing it and why I was down in Mexico, and it kind of really helped me to remember my purpose and what the impact I was going to have on the community was. So I think the most important aspect of this experience is the relationships. Life is about people, not stuff, is one of Live Different's quotes, and it is the truest statement that I could take from this experience. Relationships are such a vital part of life, and when you can build friendships and relationships across the world, it can help you to be so much more aware of the world around you, and it gives you a vast knowledge of the different cultures and ways of life in the world. Relationships, both good and bad, are a part of life. We will meet people that are challenging to us, and they will create roadblocks in our life, and we just have to realize what those people are there for. They are a lesson, they are an experience that we will have to get through and embrace that for what it is worth, and it's to also help us to discover something about ourselves. I think that during the academy I made a strong effort to build relationships, create lasting friendships, and took the time to meet as many new people as I could and to listen to their stories. Because one of the most important things was asking people questions, asking them about their life, and having them ask me questions about my life to just build that, the beginning of the building blocks of creating those friendships and those relationships. That was one of my goals going into the program. At the beginning we had to create 2 goals. And one was based on my want to learn the language and to practice my Spanish and to use it as much as I could during my 3 months, and the other was based on relationships. And I think that although there is always room for improvement and the opportunity that I could have done more, I know that in my efforts I made a really good effort, and I really opened myself up to the new relationships and created some lasting connections with the amazing people down in Mexico. If I had to describe this experience in 3 words, I would choose fulfilling, because when I left Mexico, I left it with such a great sense of fulfillment, knowing that my time spent there was worthwhile and it made an impact on the community. This experience was also very eye-opening. It helped me get a better understanding of the people in the community and their culture, their way of life, and their ongoing struggle. And it also opened my eyes again, because I've been there many times, but it also opened my eyes again to the need that is forever present in these kind of communities, in Mexico especially. Lastly, the word I would say is restorative. This experience started as a really fun humanitarian trip to volunteer, build a house, learn some Spanish, learn a little bit more about the Mexican culture, and hopefully build some sort of relationship and make some sort of small impact in the community. And I was almost not ready for what it became, because it was over those 3 months, it almost was a fully transformative experience for me, where I was given the opportunity to grow as an individual and the chances to learn more about myself as a person. It was a 3-month break from the day-to-day stresses of the real world and the busy world, and it was a time away that I didn't know that I needed. I'm so lucky to have had the opportunity to be a part of this cross-cultural immersion program, and to know that those 3 months played a huge part in shaping my life going forward, my choices and outlook on life, as well as giving me a more detailed perspective as to what my purpose was and my passions are in life. I am more aware, more mindful, more conscious, and more open to what is possibly in store for me going forward. So each week was a new adventure in Mexico, from volunteering in the community, supporting students at an after-school program, learning a new language, helping out with the Baja Rally, and building a home for a deserving family. And so the Baja Rally in specific was one really cool cultural experience. It's a local race that happens every year in the Baja, which is right along the coast, and it's 4.5 days long, and they have motorbikes and UTVs and people from all over the world. There was a guy from Korea, there was many Canadians, there was Americans, there was Mexicans, people from Spain, and they all come down to race in this Baja Rally. And it was really cool. We kind of got a behind-the-scene look at that. We got to go and work with the riders. We got to get up at 4:30 in the morning and check their bikes, and we got to send them off on the starting line. It was one of the coolest parts of the trip, because you got to be right in with the culture and such an important cultural event that happens every year in this community. There was really never a dull moment. In between all of the volunteering and classes and events, there was one moment that impacted me the most. Saturday, September 29th, we visited a community where we met a young woman named Ruth. We didn't know her beforehand, and we did not plan to meet her that day. Live Different was not very present in this community that we were working in at the time, and they were new to the area. We had gone to this particular community to begin developing a relationship with a few of the occupants and to kind of begin helping the community grow and to see what we could do to support them as they grew, as many of the people had purchased land in the community but not yet moved onto the property because it was a little bit farther out and farther away into the mountains, away from the main road, so harder to access. We were just walking through the community. There were only 5 or 6 families living in this community at the time, and the first property we came to was Ruth's. So we introduced ourselves to her, and we began talking to her, listening to her story and asking her questions. We learned that she had recently moved to this community with her 2 sons, her teenage daughter, and her new grandchild. Now Ruth lives in a very small shack that she had constructed herself out of scrap wood, cardboard, and plastic. She goes to work in the field every day to provide what little that she can for her family and is a single mother. We did not learn much more about her that day, but we knew that she wanted our help and that we wanted to help her in any way that we could. We helped her out by digging a deep banyo hole, a bathroom hole for her outhouse, and added a few fence poles to her property. She started to build a fence but had run out of materials, and so it was partially unfinished. So we did what little we could that day and brought her some fence poles and were 10 feet down in the hole digging her an outhouse hole. She had started to build a fence, wasn't completed, and so we just went in, we helped her. We had materials that we had brought down some extra money. We used our funds because that's what it was allocated for, was for this community in specific that we would go to every single week. And this was the first day. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know who we were going to help. We didn't know what the need was going to be, but we just kind of walked in, walked up to her house, and she was the first house we went to that day. So we left that day wishing that we could have done more, but she was very thankful for our help. She thanked us so many times and was incredibly grateful for everything we had done. As we walked away from her property that day, it sort of all hit me at once. I was full of joy and fulfillment and thought to myself that this is why I'm here. This is why I'm spending 3 months of my life down in Mexico, and this is why Live Different does what they do in these communities, and why that I will always remember that moment. Ruth, she never once came asking for help. She needed it, but was one of the few who never asked for it. She was genuinely grateful, and our small hand up that afternoon had made the world of difference to her and her family. Each volunteer experience that we had was so impactful in so many different ways. Each week we would have a schedule, and aside from our weekly Spanish classes and social justice classes, we would visit several local programs and organizations in the community to volunteer. Those times were some of the most meaningful. To see the development of this community since we first visited in 2008 was astonishing. I can't even begin to describe what it looked like in 2008 and what programs were in place, if any, and to what it is now. To see programs in place for adults and kids with disabilities, after-school programs for kids that is now able to provide meals to students so that they don't have to stay home alone waiting for their parents to return home from the fields, English classes for students looking to learn a new language. All of these programs give me a lot of hope for these communities and for the people that are living in them. So Eternal Anchor. Eternal Anchor was founded in 2014. It's one of the organizations that we worked at, and it's an organization in Vicente Guerrero, in the town where we live, that offers a day program for both children and adults with disabilities. I had the privilege to work 2 mornings a week with the children's program. Eternal Anchor has over 40 children who attend the program each day. They have all ages attending the school, from newborn babies to 17-year-olds, and several children living in the home on the property with staff. There are baby classes, classes for students with extreme physical disabilities, more hands-on classes for kids with more intellectual disabilities, as well as some physical therapy classes and music classes. I was working in the life skills class. This was with the older children around ages 10 to 16. In this particular class, the students had an opportunity to work on basic life skills like cooking, gardening, laundry, and it is an amazing program that gives these students more responsibility and helps them to just get more of those basic skills going forward in their life, because these are many children in this particular group who could go on to live in group homes or live in homes by themselves or just a bit more independent, but they don't have these skills built in place, especially in this community. It's just stuff that is not taught to them. Each day we started with gym class outside, and then we worked on folding clothes, buttoning shirts, tying shoes, sometimes going to tend to the plants outside the school, and each day we were responsible for making the snack for all of the children at Eternal Anchor. Students taught me a thing or two about making homemade tortillas. To say that this program is needed in this community is an understatement. In Mexico, a program like this is almost unheard of. Before the creation of Eternal Anchor, many of the children who now attend would have been kept at home all day, possibly in a bed, on a chair, or just on the floor for hours and hours at a time. Parents did not know how to care for their children with disabilities, and neither does the community. They just didn't know how to support it. This program is a blessing to all of these students and all of these kids in Mexico, and I was so lucky to have the chance to volunteer with them and get to know them all. The other main organization that we worked with was Oasis. Oasis is an after-school program for local students in the community. Many parents in Mexico are working 7 or 8 hours a day, picking fruits or vegetables in the local fields, and they don't get home until after 5, once they take the buses home and get back to their homes. And school in Mexico usually runs from about 7:30 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon. So Oasis is a program where students can go after school, work on homework, take extra classes, do activities, play with other kids, and just kind of be in a safe environment. The program is open to any students in grades 1 through 8, and currently they have a waiting list due to its popularity. There's only 2 locations. They each have about 100 kids. I got to volunteer in the grade 1 and 2 class twice a week. When we first got there after school, we would help the kids with their homework, which was perfect because when we first started volunteering there, my Spanish was only at about grade 1-2 level, so it was a perfect fit. The teacher would have games or activities planned. Sometimes we would color, watch a movie, play soccer outside, or interact with the other groups, the other classes. The idea is that these students have a safe, fun, and exciting place to be. It was so incredible to build a relationship with these kids and to kind of see the excitement in their eyes every day when we came, because it just meant to us that they loved seeing us as much as we loved coming to see them. And again, just building those relationships, and it all comes down to that basic knowledge of basic Spanish. They're still kids, they're still learning. They were learning English, so it was kind of really cool to go back and forth and teach them words. They would teach us words, but just knowing basic conversation was giving us that opportunity to ask them questions, get to know their names, if they have any brothers or sisters, what their favorite color is, just simple things like that that really make you more connected to the students, and it really shows them that you care. A quote that I read recently was, "Culture is the widening of the mind and of the spirit." To live in a new country and embrace its culture to the fullest is the best education that you could get. Watching the local parades, celebrations, cooking and sharing cultural recipes and meals, asking questions about local traditions and holidays, and taking the time to actually learn about the proper cultural practices and customs, each day in Mexico was another opportunity to dive even deeper into the rich culture. There is so much to learn about this beautiful country. We had the chance to watch the Independence Day Parade in September, the Revolutionary Day Parade in November. We visited a cemetery on Dia de los Muertos where we observed dozens and dozens of families in the graveyard celebrating with their loved ones, eating, singing, dancing, spending time together. They go and they set up tents around the graves, they blast music, they bring stoves, they cook food outside, they sleep overnight, they stay up all evening visiting with their loved ones. Every couple of weeks we had a cooking class with the chef, Anna, to learn to prepare a couple of traditional Mexican dishes. We cooked sopes, chili rellenos, empanadas, cactus salads, including the homemade tortillas that I made at Eternal Anchor. I'm taking home a lot of really cool recipes and stuff, so it was really, really neat to get that cultural level and to learn from somebody and kind of get her take on it and having her teach us something, which was really cool because we were always teaching her English as well. Working in the kitchen with her, it was really cool again to interact with her and build that relationship. We also learned a lot about the Mexican culture from our host families. So Tuesday and Wednesday evening, we would visit a host family. We would eat dinner with them, learn about them while practicing our Spanish. We would go without a translator, and we would have to work together to make conversation with each other and ask the family lots of questions. I was lucky enough to meet 2 incredible families with such amazing stories. I was lucky and had the chance to work with them every night to do the cooking. They would include us, and when they were making the food, we would get there, it would all be kind of prepared and stuff, and then we would have the opportunity to cook with them and, again, learn another meal from them, which was really cool, asking tons of questions and getting to know them and their stories. One of the moms, Lorena, she works cleaning houses, and her 2 children are in school. Her 2 younger children are in school, and her oldest son works as a security guard. And these are all homes that Live Different has built. And so all these families are living in the same kind of home that we build for Live Different, which there'll be a picture of that afterwards. One important thing that I now know is if you're offered more food, you always say yes. One of the host family moms, she often assumed that you did not like her food if you didn't have 2 or 3 helpings of it. Even if you told her how full you were, she would laugh and fill your plate again. It's a form of respect for your host to eat a lot of their food and to show that you enjoyed it. No matter how full you were, there is another saying in Mexico that you don't waste food. So you would eat every last bite till you literally couldn't move. I also learned that Mexican people are extremely generous. They love to give, and no matter what, there is always enough for everyone because they're always willing to share whatever they have. They are never worried when unexpected guests arrive unannounced during dinner, which happened many times. These guests were always treated with the utmost respect, offered a seat, food, welcomed into the home. One family we visited each week always was visited by their extended family, friends. Sometimes there would be 15, 20, 25 people in the house, which doesn't seem like a big party to us, but when your house is only 400 square feet, it's pretty cozy. They would immediately give up their chairs for the new guests. They would sit 2, 3 people on a chair. The kids would grab buckets, or they would sit on their beds to make room for all the guests. Angelina would make them each a plate since there was always more than enough food to eat. There is definitely no lack of hospitality in Mexico. I believe that this experience has given me a broader understanding of what a goal is and why it's so important to have goals in our life. During my time in Mexico, we engaged in many deep discussions around the topic of our life purpose and goals in our life. It was a favorite topic of Andrew's, our leader, and he always enjoyed asking extremely difficult questions that made you think, like, what is the meaning of life? Some important advice that I picked up during these discussions and inspirational videos that he showed us was that you always need to strive to do better and be better. We always need to do one difficult thing every day to continue to grow as individuals. And that setting goals and enjoying the process of achieving that goal is just as important as reaching that goal. We need to enjoy the hard work and enjoy the process of achieving those goals. We need to understand that it's going to take time, effort, commitment, accountability, and passion to complete the tasks that we set out for ourselves. I think that a huge part of the Live Different Academy is not about working with kids at an after-school program. It's not about spending a week in a shack or picking beans in a field or even about building a home for a family. I think that a major part of this experience is the self-growth and the personal growth and personal development that occurs during those 3 months. If you go into this experience with an open mind and an open heart, you will have the opportunity to grow and mature and begin to discover who you are and why you are here. I know personally that this experience has helped me with that, and I am grateful for the guidance that I had down there from my mentors. So one of the first lessons that we learned in our social justice class and international development class was about poverty. A quote that was shared with us on that first day really stuck in my mind after class. Poverty is punishment for a crime you didn't commit. So we were asked, why are some people rich and some people are poor? And this question makes you stop and think for a moment, like, why do I live in the country that I do? Why do I have the parents that I have? Why did I go to school for 12 years? And why do I have absolutely everything that I could possibly need? I thought about this a lot, and when I was at the Oasis after school program later that day, I thought about it more and how these kids are growing up a very different life than I did. I had everything that I could ever need or want growing up, when the boy across from me might live in a very small house made of tarps and cardboard in the Mexican desert. He might live with his single mother, or his grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. His parents might work in the field picking fruits and vegetables. He might be currently eating his only meal today, provided by the after-school program. And he might even have to drop out of school before junior high to help provide for his family. Like so many kids in Mexico. What put him in that position and me in the one that I'm in? Something that our teacher Hope said to us one day in class. She was our Spanish teacher and our social justice teacher. She said to us, and it really made me think, and it's from Corinthians 1, what do you have that you did not receive? And so they call it the birth lottery. Being born in Canada, we have been granted better job opportunities, better financial opportunities, and more chances to get ahead in life. So now I'm going to toss out some numbers here. According to Statistics Canada, the average wage for a full-time Canadian employee is $952 a week. This is the average. There are people who make less and people who make more. This is just under $50,000 a year. However, if you make less, you are still rich on a global scale. So to put it in perspective, if you make $10,000 to $15,000 a year, you are in the top 18% of the world. And the job descriptions that they give were bartenders, hostesses, fast food cooks. If you're in the $30,000 to $35,000 a year, you are in the top 4%. That was starting pilots, teaching assistants, secretaries, office clerks. If you're in the $50,000 to $75,000 a year bracket, you're in the 1%. Actually, it's even less than 1%. It's 0.62%. That's nurses, paramedics, chartered accountants. And we know there are people who make more than $75,000 a year. A local person in Mexico in 2019 makes around 180 to 200 pesos a day. They get paid by a daily wage, which is equivalent to 12 to 15 Canadian dollars a day, which means that they have a yearly income of around $3,800, which still puts them in the top 25% for wealth in the world, which is kind of crazy. If you can't already tell, I love quotes. So another quote that I read during the academy was, "The things that we take for granted, someone else is praying for." So in Canada, we take life for granted. We take our freedom, our education, our shelter, and most importantly, our opportunity for granted. People in Mexico don't lack commitment or hard work or perseverance or many times even education. They lack the opportunity. Their country that they live in does not support them or give them the chances to live a better life. The programs just aren't in place. They were just born into it and they know no different. Working 12 hours a day for $12 to $15 an hour, or $12 to $15 a day is normal. Poor work environments are normal. Not being able to afford to send your children to school is normal. Not having time or money to build a safe and secure home is normal. And over 50% of the world lives like this. So our normal is not a normal way of life. I got to experience this in a very small way. During the Week in the Life portion of our academy program, we had to build a shelter out of materials we found. We went searching a few days before and found wood, some plastic, different scraps. We went to the local convenience store and asked to borrow some wooden pallets and some cardboard. And we also had some help from the lumber yard where Live Different gets their materials for the house builds. Adrian, who works there, gave us a couple 2x4s and a plywood sheet and a tarp. That was it. So we went to work building this shelter, only about 4 feet off the ground, just high enough for us to crawl into and sleep at night. So we lay cardboard on the floors to kind of keep the warmth coming from the bottom. and to create a barrier between the dirt and us. After 2 days, we finished building our shack, as we called it. We were allowed to bring a few items with us, including a sleeping bag, a blanket and pillow, not many clothes, two changes of clothes, and one personal item, like a book or a journal. No electronics, no food, and I definitely wasn't allowed to bring my hairdryer. Each day we would wake up around 4:30 in the morning, start a fire, cook our breakfast, prepare our lunch, boil water, wash dishes, and clean up before heading to work. We did that all before the sun even came up. We walked by to the bus stop for 6:30 and started work around 7:30. We spent the day picking weeds in a sunflower field, picking green beans, shelling macadamia nuts at a factory. 8 hours each day for 120 pesos. It was literal back-breaking work. Those were some of the longest days that I've ever experienced. After work, we would return to our shack, start a fire, cook dinner, boil the water, do the dishes, and usually we're in bed around 6:30, 7 o'clock because we were so exhausted and it was pitch black. So there was nothing else to do but go to bed. One thing I learned from the week was, just one of the main things I learned was how much time, energy, and effort goes into living that way. The amount of time that it takes to start a fire, cook on it, and clean your dishes is 5 times the amount of time that it would take me at home. People living in poverty do not live to work, they work to live. They spend all of their time and energy working and providing for their families. It was a very surreal moment when we were in the fields one day picking green beans alongside 3 women. We were talking to them, asking them about their families. One lady was a new grandmother, and she'd been working in the fields for 45 years. This was her whole life, and we were exhausted after 3 days. It really puts this week in a life into perspective. This was only a week for us. We were going back to our warm beds, we were going back to our kitchens, our dishwashers, our electronics. But it was a reality, it is a reality for most people living in this community. Now I know that I had said before that people in Mexico don't lack education, and that's partially true. Education is there, but it's something that Live Different and Andrew, I've talked to him a lot, it's kind of what they call like a partial program. There are tons of elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, universities, colleges, educational programs. You can go to school right in this community to become a nurse, a teacher, a doctor. Most people in Mexico go to school for elementary school, some for middle school, and fewer for high school. Education is considered free in Mexico, but that is, again, only partially true. The education itself is free, but families end up not being able to afford the required books, uniforms, school supplies that are all mandatory in order to attend in the higher grade levels. Many students can't afford a transportation fee, and at many schools an internet fee, just to use the computers to get your schoolwork done. All of these extra costs make the free education unaffordable. So how many people in here speak a second language? A couple people? 2 people. No, 3, 4. And how many of you wish you spoke a second language? One of my favorite parts of the academy was the Spanish classes. I believe that they were so important and made a huge difference in the experience. I believe that it was so incredibly important because that if you did not take the time to learn the language, practice it, and put the effort in that was required to become more fluent when volunteering in a foreign country, you will never truly be able to build those relationships. You're never going to have the opportunity to really talk to the people, to learn about their life, and you will forever be a tourist and a foreigner in the country. Removing that language barrier is the sole most important thing that you can do when going to volunteer in a country, in a foreign country. It shows that you care, it shows that you want to connect further with the people, and it shows that you have a true passion for the community and the people that you're working with, and that you will do whatever it takes to achieve those connections. Coming home, I'm making it a priority to speak Spanish, talk with friends who speak Spanish, continue my book work, online practice, calling friends back in Mexico and conversing with them, and just trying to stay as immersed as I can from afar. It's going to be extremely difficult, and there's going to be days where I forget, days when I don't feel like practicing. But because I have such a strong passion for the people and the culture in the community, and I believe so much in the growth and development, that I'm making it a priority in my life to continue my learning after the experience. So near the end of our 13 weeks in Mexico, we got to build a home for a family. It is always one of my favorite things to do in Mexico. It is the build trips that got my family involved with Live Different in 2008, and it is what has kept us involved ever since. I always love getting to work with the family to build their home, painting with the kids, working with the mom and dad. They are so proud, and they work so hard to help build the home. The family that we built for was beautiful. It was a mom and a dad and their 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. They had previously lived in a 1-room home that the father had built. They all slept on 1 bed, and the family had never had electricity before in their life. It was an incredible moment when Ani Lana, the mom, turned on the lights for the very first time. She had never had lights, 33 years old, and she had never had lights before, ever. It was always a very special day when the house is finished and that we can celebrate with the family. Mexico, and specifically Vicente Guerrero, this community we work in, will always be like a second home to me. I first went on a Live Different build trip when I was 9 years old, and since then, this place has had a piece of my heart. The culture, the people and their kindness, the weather, the sense of community, and of course the food, is all that kept me coming back. I love the person that I am when I am in Mexico. I love the opportunities that I am gifted with when I'm down there, and being immersed in the community for 3 months, volunteering in the schools, building relationships with so many like-minded, caring, and genuinely kind-hearted people helped me to realize that I want to continue helping people in any way that I can. I want to reevaluate, check in with myself on what my current goals and dreams are, and put in an action plan to start achieving them, because there's no time like the present. If someone had told me a year ago today that I would be spending 3 months in Mexico with the Live Different Academy, I would have never believed it. It was always something that I wanted to do eventually in my life, but it was never a priority, and up until this year, it was something that I had not made time for. I am extremely glad that I did. I am so grateful that all of the pieces in my life fell together to make this a possibility. I'm full of gratitude for all of the support I was given leading up to the experience and all of the guidance and mentorship that I had along the way. It truly was a life-changing experience for me that I will never forget. I will take all of the lessons and experiences with me as I continue to learn and grow in my own life. And I know that I changed as a person, and I hope that I continue to grow as an individual thanks to my time in Mexico. It was such a positive experience, and one that I didn't know I needed, which definitely surprised me in a great way. I learned more about myself, experienced a new culture, gave back to the community, made lifelong friends, ate some amazing food, learned a new language, spent time with smiling children, built a home for a family in need, stepped way out of my comfort zone, and opened myself up to embrace everything that that experience had to offer. Thank you so much.